The two people I have, number one, I have or rather, number two, I have the current governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. Like who's in his mid to late 60s. But I think North Carolina right now it's kind of leaning Republican, but that's a potential state that could become toss-up if the right moves are made, because they have a Democrat governor, so they could potentially vote for a Democratic candidate for president.
Solid. And that's why Trump doesn't have to do a lot of work. Like, he knows what his base is, and he also knows that everyone who is Republican, for the most part, they're going to support him. They're going to vote for him. And so he doesn't have to do that much work. His rallies are more like inspirational meetings, as opposed to talking about what the party is going to do and issues and things like that. The Democrats.
Now the VP. Yeah, I mean the VP pick. Like I have two people I have in mind. I could be entirely wrong, because I'm thinking in terms of someone who could bring power to a state.
Where to appear your two people, and then you tell us why.
Yeah. So the two people I have, number one, I have or rather, number two, I have the current governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper. Like who's in his mid to late 60s. But I think North Carolina right now it's kind of leaning Republican, but that's a potential state that could become toss-up if the right moves are made, because they have a Democrat governor, so they could potentially vote for a Democratic candidate for president. I think the downside is that he's older, and then to me my second pick is the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro. That's another part of the blue wall. Pennsylvania. It's very important. If this was Kenya, like I would shift and I would carry people. In Kenya, what people do when people shift. Like if Annette is running in the next constituency, we'll all shift and go register there, so that we can go vote. Yeah, I live like less than an hour from the Pennsylvania line, so. And that's a very rural part of Pennsylvania. So I think that's going to be a very, very important state, because to me, the three states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and which was the third one, Michigan, those are critically important.
What about Georgia?
To me, at this point, if we win Georgia, to me, it's a steal. Although with Kamala coming in, because Georgia had started leaning Republican by the polls. So if we win Georgia, I think with Kamala, with all the activation of black people in registering and wanting to vote for her, so Georgia may come into play. But for me, Georgia, just like it was a steal during Biden's time, I will still consider it a steal. It's not a state that I would count on so much. There's the Arizona guy, I'm forgetting his name, Kelly. Arizona is still also kind of leaning Republican, which is why I would stick to the North Carolina guy and to the Pennsylvania guy. The Pennsylvania guy is a bit young. I think he's in his early 50s. So those are my picks. But then, this has been a year of surprises.
It has.
Who knows?
Ali, I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you on Shapiro. That for me, based on, like, as you said, everything that you look at it, I agree on Shapiro, because I think Shapiro can help with those Rust Belt states. And let's be honest, it's going to be, if it's the YT dude, and his age is not that gone too much. He's not, so he can appeal to both the older, because the reason we want a YT guy, and especially a white guy who's middle-aged and going up, is for the white older voters. That demographic is the demographic we want. And then we also want a demographic with somebody that's coming from those Rust Belt states, those working states, the states that have iron mining and all that stuff. And with him, we know that iron mining is a big thing in Pennsylvania. That is one of the things that Biden actually one of the positives from Biden. He revived that industry. So if this is a governor who comes from a state that was revived, and he knows the importance of it, so he clearly can motivate and stimulate the Rust Belt voters, who are also very important in terms of stealing, on making steals on that demographic. So for me, Shapiro is the one that I look. I look at all the Democrats that have been fronted. I look is good. Michigan, it would have been good, but you cannot have a all-women ticket. You cannot have two women
the
running
Michigan
for VP.
governor. Yeah.
What about we cannot have those two.
What about is he the transport cabinet secretary Pete Buttigieg?
No. That one it will be a turnoff to most of the YT voters, especially the older YT voters.
Yeah, why, Annette, are you shaking your head? Like, don't you think that he might?
I am a
where
fan
is he from?
of
He's
him.
Is he from Iowa?
I'm a fan of him. Yeah. He ran he also ran
at
an
one interesting
point.
campaign.
It was a very interesting campaign. It did appeal to the younger voter, and so I have, I respect the campaign that he ran. Now that he's dealing with transportation, he did come to the state of Maryland, unfortunately, when we had the bridge collapse, and has actually garnered a pretty good reputation across the nation when it comes to him fulfilling his role in that particular right now. And so the reason I'm shaking my head is just because he's not going to do, like, these things are strategic. You don't pick haphazardly. So when Obama picked Biden, there was a lot of thought about that, and it's not like something where you go and you pick your best friend and you're like, hey, let's go, we work well together. It's not like that.
Like the Kenyan handshake.
No, it's none of that. The people you like, they end up, maybe they might get a role that they want, but they're not going to be the VP pick. And so it's very strategic. You want someone like everything that has been said. I agree about galvanizing certain demographics, and also to lighten the load. So Kamala Harris can only be in one place at one time. When you have your VP pick, then now you can start splitting the nation and going and visiting different places at the same time. And so, you need to have like 2, 3, 4 touches, which is like interactions that an individual has with your campaign in order to garner their support if they did not have your support in the beginning, right? And in Kamala Harris's situation, she is new, and so she has to, make a lot of efforts for those who are undecided. But something that is also going to be affected by her VP pick is, again, the new voter registration. So when this announcement was made and the endorsement was made, we had thousands of individuals go online and figure out how they can register to vote. There's never been a registration drive that has garnered.
So that was just a reaction to the announcement.
A reaction.
Yes. Wow. Okay.
So people were like, "Oh, what? He's stepping down? Am I registered to vote? I need to
go check.
I need to figure this out."
And it was like 38,000 people, or however
40,000.
many. Yes, amount of people who individually made that decision. And I mean, there was no get out the vote campaign that happened immediately after. This was unsolicited. This was people saying, I'm taking the initiative and doing that. And so the VP pick can do that as well. If she picks someone that excites people, then you're going to have more people do voter registrations. And we know statistically that new voters lean independent and Democrat, right? And so that doesn't mean that new voters can't be Republicans, but Republicans just have a culture of registering to vote like immediately as soon as you are qualified in the state. And so their numbers are very solid. And that's why Trump doesn't have to do a lot of work. Like, he knows what his base is, and he also knows that everyone who is Republican, for the most part, they're going to support him. They're going to vote for him. And so he doesn't have to do that much work. His rallies are more like inspirational meetings as opposed to talking about what the party is going to do and issues and things like that. The Democratic Party is very distinctly different because it's very issues focused, but we also needed some galvanizing. We also needed some inspiration. And so Harris did bring that. There's a new momentum. And so she's going to want to pick somebody who is going to continue that momentum and up the ante.
Okay, comments here coming in. Ulrika Bernard says, what's happening in the U.S. right now is a great first step to get people involved. A lot of folks don't understand the chess in the game. They only see the checkers. We need the House and the Senate. But most of all, you need to vote for local election because that's what directly affects your life. From your cops on the streets to the conditions of the roads, Kamala matters, but your local elections matter more because she can't get much done without the folks that follow her. And then Award Joanne says Westmore wants to run for president. And then Ulrika Bernard says Westmore is great, but he's new. Hakim is amazing, but an all-black ticket will guarantee a loss. Maybe Shapiro because he's ready to throw hands. And then Awar says Shapiro or Bashir. I don't know about Bashir. Bashir is the governor for Kentucky.
Yes.
I don't know. I know he can be good in getting the Rust Belt, but Kentucky in itself is not a battleground state. And then
battleground state.
Yeah.
Old white voters. We need to steal some numbers.
We need to steal them. Okay.
Yes.
Evan says Pennsylvania has been on the news lately from Trump's unfortunate events to pick Governor Shapiro. Pennsylvania is a swing state, but is always critical. And then Stephen JJ says Governor of Pennsylvania, Joe Shapiro. Esther Mulusa. Esther, tell us where you're watching us from. That place that you call Shimalavandu or whatever the name. Tell us where you're tuned in from. And then Udi Madenge says Georgia is going Dems. I am not sure, Udi. I hope it does.
On the ground in Georgia,
yeah,
Udi is right.
No, I hope it does. But
let me tell you the rhetoric when you're there.
Yeah.
Even the ads you see.
No, I agree with you. Of course, if you're in Atlanta,
it's a totally different animal.
But
if you're in Atlanta,
let me give you because I see where Ali is coming from, right? Remember, Georgia Democrats are in two places: Atlanta and what's the name of this? The Beach,
Savannah.
Savannah.
Yeah,
those two places. That is where the numbers are.
Yes.
Now, the rest of rural Georgia, right? Rural Georgia is where the problem is.
Big
and
problem.
That is why you see I keep insisting on we need to cut a chunk of that old white people vote. Because now that Biden has gone, we have lost it to Trump. He controls it right now. Biden took a chunk of it from him.
No.
So we need a VP who's good. So, and in Georgia, which the elections usually, remember, how they're campaigning in Georgia. They're campaigning in Georgia, they're telling him, look, our leader is being crucified by these people who we allowed in our place, our home. Because they still see black people as slaves there, as working.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's why they look at it, it's being done here. So we need to make sure that this place, we sanctify it and make it clean for our leader to be safe. So they are coming in numbers. The rhetoric they're pushing out there is totally different from RTCG national politics. For them, they're being told, if they can crucify Trump, what stops them from taking over the state from us?
Now, Georgia, according, there's how the ground feels, and there's also what the polls are saying. And the polls have also, it's become more difficult to poll over the years.
Georgia is very tough to poll.
Georgia,
until you see that thing.
Georgia.
I hear all of that.
So Georgia, according to the Cook Political Report, it's not even a toss-up. It has it leaning Republican, but it's something that can, because typically the margin of error is 3. So if it's within 3%, it will be listed as a toss-up. If it's more than 3%, it's gonna go towards leaning. So it's not like Georgia cannot come back. I believe it might come back to toss-up once we have newer polls coming in. Because like Michigan now is tied. Michigan is now tied. Kamala Harris and Biden was down by 3 points. So I think within a week, within 2 weeks, we're going to start seeing some shifts.
I just like to say about Atlanta.
Yeah.
Atlanta is when it comes to what you're seeing on the ground, what you're feeling, and what the rhetoric is, whether you are in in the country or whether you're in the cities, one thing about Georgia is that the Republican Party has made its best due diligence effort to make sure that voter suppression is the norm there. And so you have to understand some of the nuances in how voting happens in the state of Georgia. Georgia is one of the places that Trump called up and said, hey, we need to figure out these numbers. Like,
give him a number.
Georgia is one of those places, right? Because he has friends over there, and also there's an understanding of how they do elections in Georgia. And so if you are in Georgia, one thing that I would say is, of course, get out and vote, and
make sure you're on the rolls.
Make sure that you're registered to vote, but then also don't stop paying attention, for the next 4 years after this. There are grassroots movements that are trying to change the laws so that these types of tactics are no longer acceptable in the state of Georgia, and that the representation can actually reflect those who live within the state.
Okay.